assumptions. This also is, where I will say, we talk about storytelling. I consider this as the what of the entire story. Say, you know what, how does your financial model come together? And the way I tend to look at it is like building blocks. As an aside, Jenga is, I think a lot of people like Jenga. It comes from, I was looking it up before this meeting, and it comes from the word kujenga. Does anyone know the history or the origin of that word? If you do, please just pop it in the chat. But I think it's just some interesting insight I learned today about the origin of Jenga. So, but back to Jenga, or building blocks and financial models. The way I want to look at it is financial modeling, complex term, but let's look at assumptions. No matter your business, you understand your assumptions. You know that in your control, they're in your power, and look at it that way, that your financial model is effectively a whole build-up of assumptions. Charlotte touched on this earlier on about what investors want, and we look at it in the poll as well. There are just a few lines in a financial model that investors care about, and there are some of the building blocks. You won't know which is most important to you, or maybe those parts you want to emphasize as well. It's very important to bear that in mind, because at the end of the day, when you build a model, you're going to use it to tell the story. Okay, one question we've had a lot of is, okay, I understand. A financial model is made up of assumptions, the building blocks for my model. Where on earth do I find those assumptions, and how do I know if they make sense? There are two broad approaches here. I would say top-down and bottoms-up. Top-down is basically just starting from the markets. And Charlotte talked about consistency in storytelling. When you start with market, it's like, what are your assumptions about the market? Do you have a pitch deck or a business plan where you've done some research and you've talked about the markets? That has to go into your financial model. They are not, your business plan or pitch deck and financial model are not two different. They are not two different things. They're married. They're joined at the hip. One fits into the other. Your business plan fits into your financial model because it supplies some of the assumptions, and then your financial model then fits right back into your business plan. So for the top down, you pick your market assumptions from your business plan or from your research, and then you come down from there. Say, for instance, let's look at revenue. Say if the market is 10,000 people who eat pizzas every day, you make an assumption from how many of them live in your area, maybe 1 mile radius of your area. You make assumptions for how many of them will pass on the street where you're opening your pizza shop. You go down from there and say, consider competition, how many shops are there? So if there are 100 people passing on the street and there are only 2 shops, okay, let's assume that I will take 30% because I'm new, and then I will grow that with time. And boom, you end up on your number of customers for the period, maybe a month. Multiply that by the price of you hope to sell your pizza. Maybe your competitor is selling at 10. You want to sell at maybe 12 because you're going to use premium ingredients, and you have your revenue. Exactly the same approach goes for costs. Comes from, in terms of top down, comes from market research. How much will it cost you to acquire a customer? How much will it take you to purchase the ingredients? How much will you spend on marketing? And then you have it all. That is the top-down approach, which comes from, I'll say, industry. Let's look at it as the topmost part of it all is the industry. And then at the end of the day, you have your inputs into your financial model. The other approach is bottoms up. And I dare say this is a bit more complex and a bit more tasking. But if we took the former, the same, let's use cost this time. If I wanted to say, okay, my marketing cost, in the top-down approach, I'll say, okay, maybe I'll use 1% of revenue as my marketing budget. By the way, this is a conversation I've had with Charlotte a couple of times about, say, what our marketing budget is. And we say, okay, what does it make sense in terms of we use one approach? What do people do? What do similar businesses spend on marketing? Okay, maybe it's 1% of revenue or 2% of revenue, multiply that and say, okay, that should be our marketing budget for the year. A second approach, which we've embarked on, which takes lots more grit, lots more inputs, is the bottoms up to say, okay, let's look at how much has it cost us to acquire a customer in real life on our spending. Billboards, let's assume we have a billboard somewhere in many places across the UK, on social media, on different items. How much have we spent in a month? How many customers have we acquired? And by that simple ratio, you can understand what your customer acquisition cost is. Let's say it is £5 per customer. And then you say, okay, I will use that figure because that is a real figure. I will multiply that by the number of customers I want to get, and I know what my marketing budget should be for that particular item. What if you haven't, you started from scratch, you don't have data like that? You could also, it's also some research to say, there's some standards in terms of conversion rates. And people use funnels a lot in marketing to say conversion rate from people who see your idea to people who buy, conversion rate from people who come to your website to who sign up, people who sign up will pay. So there are also those conversion rates, which hopefully you can easily find it out by researching or by speaking to people who have done it before. That's that on those two approaches. In terms of how to use them, very simply, it's a combination. And there's no one size. There are times you need to use one approach, and then there are times you use the other one. But I think it's always very useful, either for revenue or for cost, to be aware of the two approaches. Okay, one other question we get, and I suspect we'll have, is, when you've done this mumbo jumbo of building up your assumptions, how do you know if they make sense? Very simply, if it makes sense to you, it makes sense. If you've done your homework, if you can present it very confidently, if it supports your narrative, then it makes sense. So the key thing there is just your narrative, doing your homework, and being extremely confident. And then your assumptions, they're only as good as how you tell the story. One other thing here is that the assumptions, or really the entire financial modeling process, is also not, you build a model and that's the end. It's actually an iterative process where you build a model, you share with an investor, or you build out your model, or you start building out your business, you update your assumptions, and you continue building. So we see it not really, we talk about it as a fundraising tool, but more importantly, it's an operational tool and it's a live document which keeps getting updated. It's a learning tool as well. Charlotte, do you want, you've done some work on the assumptions. Do you want to add anything to this?
Sorry.
Yeah, I was asking whether you want to add anything to assumptions and how they fit with storytelling at this point.
I will add it into the storytelling part, I think, which is coming up right away.
Okay.